Today, we're diving into the world of fractional product work with Mirela Mus, founder and CEO of Product People, Europe's largest fractional product agency. We're gonna talk about why 42% of startups fail due to the lack of product market fit. So how can having a product-minded founder save millions? The real reasons why companies hire fractional product managers beyond just filling headcounts, how agencies like Product People help companies scale product teams without breaking the bank, the difference between interim versus fractional product work, and why not all agencies are created equal, and why being a mercenary in product management can actually help teams make better decisions. If you ever wondered whether a fractional product agency is right for your business, or if you're a product manager thinking about going independent versus joining an agency, this episode is packed with insights you don't want to miss. Thank you so much for the gift. It's the first time that a guest come and give me an actual swag. What was the most surprising thing that you find every time you land in Dubai?
I worked with a lot of people who worked in Dubai. So I think there's a bit of this trajectory with people working in Singapore, Bangalore, and Dubai, and then come to Berlin or London or Paris. So I've interacted with people who've been previously with Grab or Careem or some of the darlings of the region. And it definitely feels working at an accelerated pace compared to Europe. So in Europe, you get a lot of this work-life balance and other stuff, whereas and I'm maybe miscomparing, putting Singapore and Dubai on the same page, but at least I've seen people who kind of move around between these places. And they all say that, yeah, you can move very fast. Of course, the local market has different specifics on how you build product and what kind of products you build. But definitely love what's happening here, and also saw the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is trying to move even faster. So super exciting.
You've been to Saudi or not yet?
Not yet.
Oh, you have to. It's insane. But you're the founder of Product People. What exactly is Product People?
We aim to be the premier destination for product management services in Europe. So this could be use cases like a post-merger and acquisition harmonization of the digital product portfolio, especially since Europe is so many distinct countries with different customs and languages. What happens with private equity comes in, swoops in the market leaders or second best in, let's say, a consumer product, in real estate or food ordering or anything else, and then merges this together on the same platform, figures out what are the best monetization tactics across the continent or in specific countries. But when they do that, usually the in-house staff is kind of busy maintaining the local brand and the local product. And also they're used to operating in a smaller company because they were in just this company that they signed up for. They didn't sign up to be in a larger PE group. And that's some of the things that we help them with through this transitionary period, that sometimes 2 to 3 years, but it could be also faster, like 6 months. So that is an example of what we do. In other cases in Europe, you have very long leaves, either when people go on parental or are sick, or if they leave the company, that's also about 3 months to 6 months gap. And our in-house product managers cover this time frame so that the company doesn't lose momentum and they still build the right things and they still maintain the pace, and a few other cases where we come in.
So the way I understand it is like an agency for product managers, like product manager as a service, or that's over a simplification?
That's the perfect simplification for it.
That's interesting, because usually in our industry we can see designers as a service, designers that have design agency. We can see the engineers at an agency work. They create the websites for you, but never as product managers at an agency. How does that works?
It also surprised a few people in Europe when I wanted to build this in the beginning, and I got a lot of pushback because people believe, rightfully so, that product should be in-house. But you could make the same argument for strategy. Strategy should be in-house, and then you have the big 3 consulting firms and everyone else doing strategy as a service. So there's always an external need that you have once in a while. I believe this need shouldn't be permanent. So we don't position ourselves as this type of agency where you permanently outsource to us. And I know there are these type of agencies that go more in the body leasing. That's why we see ourselves intervening at certain moments where it's best for the client to get help. And that help is in a moment of some sort of instability or uncertainty or a gap that the full-time staff cannot cover or is not around to cover.
So product managers and consultants, we always disagree on things. We say that product managers, we love to have ownership of product for many years. We can build the product and see how the product performs over time. I'm just curious, what kind of product managers that will happily work on several projects in a short period of time without having a lot of ownership?
So there are two cases that we attract. People early in their career who want to figure out what they want to do. Sometimes they figure out they don't want to do product. So we see it sometimes at our 2-year associate product manager program that some people leave and they don't come back to product anymore. And there are others who want to figure out in which industry they should build these products for a few years. So we have people coming and staying with us for 1 or 2 years and figuring out they want to do sustainability or want to be in mobility or real estate and so on. And through the many clients that they work on at Product People, it's very easy for them to then get a job in that sector because a lot of recruiters prioritize some domain expertise, and they would have gained that through the multitude of clients that we have. The other ones are later in their career, so usually seniors, who want to not be pigeonholed in a certain industry. Because if you've done payments, then all the inbound recruitment you get is for payments, and your CV won't be highlighted for anything else like retention or engagement or a B2B SaaS product. It's like, no, you've done payments, go do more ADN and Stripe integrations and figure out how we optimize costs over there. So these are the other types of people. Of course, we've had very good seniors that had just done B2B in their past lives and wanted to do consumer products, wanted to work on high traffic apps and so on, and they got that with us. So through our positioning and also through doing incrementally things that they were already good at, and then the client had a bit more work and they were already there and they could get another side. I agree with the ownership, but you can also have a lot of impact even in an established product in 3 to 6 months. So if you think, depending also on how fast development moves over there, you could run a lot of A/B tests. You could discover a full solution or a full new experience, or you can figure out and invalidate a few hypotheses. So I think people discount the effect of rapid short-term interventions, especially if things get a little bit sluggish or if companies lose momentum. So sometimes it's also good to have a bit of extra energy there, or even at a minimum, even if this product manager keeps the lights on, it would still have been better than not having them. Because a development team, at least in Europe, is between $500,000 to $1 million per year all in, if you think also all the overhead. And if these people lose 3 months because they're not doing anything meaningful, that's a significant cost for the company to lose a quarter of the year and have the competition get ahead or have other things happen rather than paying for an interim to cover that gap.
So one of the feedback that I heard from the companies that use your services, which is the product managers are very professional, high agency. Do you guys have a playbook internally within Product People that will teach the best practices product managers, or no, you guys pick product managers who experience know exactly what to do?
It's a bit of both. So we also get people at the beginning of their career, because then it's easier to not come with some bad lessons from somewhere. So one of our leads has this very good advice for new hires that is as much about learning as unlearning. Because if you've been for many years in just a few companies, you have hardened the way they do product. And that could be the same even for the darlings of the world like Google and Airbnb and so on. They just have a certain way of doing product, which is very different than how some mid-sized companies do product or how an early stage startup does it. So if you go with this corporate approach that worked in Silicon Valley companies, it may not work very well in an European one, in a Middle Eastern one, and so on, and especially on their size and flavor. So that's the part. Of course, recruiting is very important. We also have playbooks, but we try to not be dogmatic. Because if you just do playbooks, then people may turn their brain off and not be super aware of what's happening at the client and come with like some cookie cutter things that the client may not want or need in that specific case. The other part we pay a lot of attention to is also abiding by our principles. And we're not the only ones. I've heard this about other consultancies as well, that you could get a very good performance review overall, but you could fail at the principles, and that may be even a cause for termination. So our top principle from 5 is low maintenance, high result, with the subtitles of make it happen, make it matter. And our people go in with this mindset, right? If they want to be low maintenance for the client, because no client brings in externals to handhold them. They're already tired of handholding the existing staff. They know that new hires usually take a lot of energy and no one wants to be bothered with them. But at the same time, they want high results because they're paying more than they would pay for a full-time employee. So there's this tension, like how do you deliver these high results, but at the same time take as little bandwidth as possible from the people bringing us in, because they're already busy and exhausted and have probably suffered through that for a while until they made a decision.
Yeah. So you mentioned that 42% of startups fail to poor product market fit. What specific practices or mindset shifts help interim PMs to quickly diagnose and improve product market fits in early engagements?
So we have commercial leadership as one of the pillars. So it's on par with product management and a few other criteria which we assess our team. And the simplest question you can ask is who is paying, why are they paying, what do they think they're buying? And especially in B2B, the person who buys may not be the user, right? So that's even like harder to understand. What are the driving factors for that? How well does the company feel that they've cornered a specific niche? The whole 100 fans theory, that have at least that to figure out if your product has traction. And also, I would say maybe in this day and age, also companies run out of money, and it's way harder to raise. And at least from what we saw, not only with VCs and especially with PEs, it's a lot of pressure on having the margins work and having a revenue model that is more conservative than before, where you are in this cash burning ages. So I feel this is even harder. And on the other side, you have the AI trend. It was basically making a lot of SaaS companies think it's like, okay, will I just be replaced by an AI agent? Can the client do this with ChatGPT? Which increases again the pressure on, do we still have product market fit? Has something changed now in the market that we need to do differently, or do it at a lower cost?
You said once that 80% of the costs in digital company are people cost. How do you advise founders or CEO who worry about scaling headcount but still need strong product teams?
I've seen companies go more towards principals or seniors, because you can say you have a 30% higher salary there, but this person can pull more weight. It's, of course, as you scale, you also need a junior and mid layer, because sometimes there are just a lot of boring tasks that the seniors may not enjoy doing. So it very much depends on the context. There's not a great way to go around it. So this is like in most companies, the costs are people costs in digital businesses, unless you run a factory or other type of facility. I've seen companies also move to countries with lower cost of living, where they could pay lower salaries, but that works with certain functions, because, for example, with product, you want the people who build the product to be in the market where that product is built, or have some awareness of the markets that they operate in. Otherwise, they may not be understanding who they're building this for. So there's a bit of a limit with how much cost cutting you can do there. I've seen this done with customer support departments, or externalizing them fully, or figuring out some ways to automate. You're still going to have them. And other companies are doing things like reducing the amount of people on a team. So let's say you would have had in the past 4 fully staffed product and dev teams, 5 developers, 1 designer, 1 PM, let's take for simplicity. And now you see 1 designer helping 2 teams, or 1 designer helping 4 teams if there's less movement on the user experience side, and the product is more mature. So you see this type of attempts. I've seen it also done with product managers. It could work in cases where, let's say, one of the if you have one PM for 2 teams, it would work in the case where one of the teams has very long and slow increments. So I've done that myself when I was helping Zalando on a maternity leave. One of the teams didn't have a PM, and they were working with ML models. And they were planning what they will build in 6 months. They had a lot of documents for that. And then there was another milestone for 3 months from now. And that was, let's say, easier from my perspective to support them, because we knew what we had in the other team that was building the consumer-facing experience, what we're planning to do, what's the general trajectory of the department, what are some use cases that we validated and we want to do. It was, as obviously, clothing recommendation. Maybe for the listeners here, this is an Amazon of Europe focused on fashion and cosmetics.
Mercenary, product managers versus Missionary. You have an interesting twist. When it's in which situation Mercenary could be the better approach?
When it's clear what you want to do, even if you want to do discovery from a direction perspective. So I can give an example from one of our customers. They were in the sleep space, so selling mattresses, pillows, everything and anything. And they were looking to have a model where they would get recurring revenue and also keep closer to the customer. And that was the pitch they gave us. Figure out something in the sleep space that brings recurring revenue, ideally an app format, so something that is like a customer companion, and helps us retain and continue the relationship with these customers over a period of time. Whereas when you buy a mattress, that's like a every 5 to 10 year type of purchase, depending on how people change this. So that was clear for us to come in and figure out the value proposition. It took in total about 11 months from figuring things out, running a low-code MVP, and then having the results of that, and that company deciding to spin this off as a separate venture because of the whole innovator dilemma, right? You can't do something new within the existing business model because it will always suffocate it. So that is one of the parts where there was less guidance, but in other cases, it could be a bank that discovers they want to enter a market, and to enter that specific market, they need a few compliance topics solved, and they have things to iron out in the value proposition for that specific market to be competitive. And then this is also a little bit more execution with a mix of discovery, because maybe while you start executing and doing that, you figure out there are different problems. You figure out that some things you tried actually don't work, or some things you thought that will work don't specifically work that way, and it needs a full redo. But this could be things where you don't need to be a missionary to figure it out. Right? It's quite clear what needs to be done. And there are types of people that get energized by these shorter term bursts of work. You know, how you have also in the army, the special forces, right? You send them in, they do a specific mission, then they get out. They don't stay stationed somewhere for years on end, like the regular troops would do. So it's kind of but it doesn't mean that they're disloyal towards the cause or that they're doing bad things on purpose, right? It's just different type of people that have different risk appetite, as well as interest in the speed on which they move through life and to work.
So many agencies are either full service or dev-centric, but you decided to focus specifically on product management. How this niche positioning help you stand out? It's
pretty hard to stand out as an agency, and we took the decision for multiple reasons. First of all, this was what I was good at, and I didn't want to do something that I'm not good as. I also saw that it was quite a red ocean, so it's very easy. If you need developers tomorrow, you're going to have 20 agencies to choose from. Whereas if you need strategy, there are fewer. It depends like what the price point you're looking at. And the other part we chose it for is also incentives, because if your incentive comes from selling developers, which are usually 80 to 90% of the revenue of these agencies, it means you don't care so much about product. It means that product may not be that free to decide which things they're cutting, because they don't want to let their colleagues out of work, or it's not in the interest of that company to come to the client and say, hey, we shouldn't do this, or you should rather use a third-party solution than building this, or you should decommission this whole area because it doesn't get a lot of traction. I'm not saying they're not doing it, but it's a bit harder, right? If you have the other incentives kind of set up like that. Whereas for us, it's pretty easy to advise in this direction. We had another client who wanted to build an MVP and was already getting quotes from development agencies, and we convinced them to initially try just testing prototypes. After that, building this with low code, and after that, getting the budget from the board to build it, let's say, for real.
So in a dev agency, usually when sometimes there's some developers are not doing nothing, they're not really utilized by any clients. So what they do is they build stuff in-house in the meantime. And product people, when you have not a lot of clients and some product managers are not being utilized, what do they do in their downtime?
Sometimes they just train, but for that we also have Fridays. Other times they enhance our knowledge base. Someone needs to clean up all these Miro boards where we did various workshops, or make them reusable for other clients, right? Because you can't reuse this with previous clients' data. They also prepare and give talks themselves. We've also supported a company where I'm a minority shareholder in that trains unemployed people into product management. And these are people coming from non-digital skills. So consider a waiter or waitress, a car mechanic, and so on. Initially, we thought, oh, okay, we need to be Reforge-like or product school-like. It's like, no, initially we needed to teach them how to do Google Slides and how to use just the digital tools that PMs are so used to knowing that it's absurd that someone wouldn't know that, right? To kind of do something in Miro. And that was also what the team at Product People did in the beginning, until this company hired its own product management teachers and built up the whole course schedule that was running for almost a year, depending on where these people were starting on their learning journey.
Can you walk me through a typical scenario where hiring product people, a specialized interim agency, is more beneficial than hiring a freelancer or a full-time permanent PM?
I would say we don't compete with full-time permanent PMs. The only time where it wouldn't be a good idea to hire this PM is if you don't know if this role will be there in 9 or 12 months. Because then it means you need to fire a person, and that's quite traumatic for the person and for the team. And I've seen companies do that because they didn't calculate the runway, or they thought there's more work needed than it was needed. But it's not a nice scenario. So that would be the only one. With freelancers, I would say it depends what people want. We don't see them necessarily as direct competition. There are many times where freelancers bring us in because especially in the product world, the more senior ones want to do coaching or want to do an interim head of director type of roles, whereas we focus more on the hands-on PM work. And sometimes a client would say, I need an interim CPO or I need an interim head of product. And it turns out they just needed a principal or senior PM. But the founders, and usually happens at earlier stages, kind of oversold the position. So then the freelancers would come to us and say, no, we actually signed up to do something else. Could you maybe take the client over?
Oh, wow. Do you have any story that you can share?
Yeah, this actually happened. There have been also cases where the freelancer didn't get along with the client, and we once in a while would lose deals to freelancers because they're able to price this lower, right? They don't have overhead costs, it's just them. Whereas with product people, we have the client-facing person, we have an associate that's supporting that person as a backup, so in case someone is sick or something happens or going for some vacation, we always have service. And then there's senior leadership person that supports all of our missions behind the scene, and we do this on a rotation basis. I sometimes support some missions. Our VP of product does that. Our product leads also have their own. So of course we have a higher cost structure because we also have this fallback plan, plus the knowledge sharing from all the companies we've all supported that could benefit that specific one and that specific person being on site. It's also proven to work in very difficult fields like doctors and with surgeries, where it's actually called the teaching hospital method, where you have the person that is learning, looks at someone doing the work, then they do the work under the supervision, and then they teach it to someone else. And apparently that's like the best way to crystallize learning. And also, when you have an audience for your work and you need to explain it, you're more attentive to what you're doing and you're putting a bit more of our best self out there. Whereas if you're by yourself, you may cut some corners like, okay, I'm tired, I'm not like going to like super polish these slides or this document and so on. It works.
So word of mouth is a huge growth driver for you. What are some ways you ensure every engagement is so good that clients become repeat champions and even recommend your services?
We've been getting better at this over time. Also, it's a necessity, I would say, for agencies, especially the ones like us that are not very strong on outbound sales. And it's not part of our DNA. I think maybe coming from product background where like I'm not a salesperson. So I don't know like the wine and dine stuff that others do very well. We have various check-ins. Usually our people as well will tell us, hey, I don't think the client is happy. I think this person from the marketing department is really unhappy with us. I think the engineering manager likes us, but the designer is grumpy because we didn't want to go with their ideas. So there's always this conundrum of persons that we identify as stakeholders, and then we rank them in importance. If they all disagree with each other, who are we pleasing at the end? And then monitoring that across time, and not monitoring only what the client says, but what do the three people involved in each engagement say. Because sometimes we've had cases where the client was very happy and we were unhappy with what the team there was doing, but the client didn't have experience with product before, and they didn't have experience even like with people showing up to meet. You know, the bar was so low there that the fact that someone was showing up to meetings, was like following up on a few things, they were very happy. Whereas we were not like very happy with the content. It was like, yeah, but it feels like they would have needed something else. And then we were working behind the scene with our client-facing person to do that better. And I wouldn't say it's like a magic trick you should do. It's all just figuring out how often we should check in, what are the signals that things may be turning, because it could be that the leadership team is perfectly happy, but then this company gets sold and there's a new leadership team, and then it's like starting all over again. Or there's some sort of restructuring, and now there are other targets that we need to meet, and then again, we need to restart and figure out, okay, what are we doing in this scenario, because everything changed again.
When you hire product managers, what exactly do you look for when you're hiring product manager?
High cognitive flexibility is definitely...
What does that mean?
You can learn very fast, okay. And you want to learn very fast. For example, in one of the clients that was in the flight booking space, I had to learn that whole sector in a few days. And it was like, at some point I was having my phone read Wikipedia pages to me to understand how the oligopoly in this booking process it is for them, because there are just like a few companies that kind of operate everything you see whenever you book a flight somewhere. So this sort of thing. And I had to do the same for food logistics and for the dev space, because of funeral homes and all the adjacent services for that, it's a super large market. And some people are not excited about that. They're like, I've already built myself up on, let's say, e-commerce, why should I bother, right? I could just get another job as a PM at another e-commerce company. I can do some more conversion optimization, this and that. So people would want to learn this, or they need to go from a B2B product to a B2C one, or to something governmental, or they will need to go from banking to health tech. And that just like takes this sort of appetite where people will be like, okay, what's interesting? What are the parallels between health tech and fintech? How is the regulation different or easier or more complex? And the other part would be just this get shit done attitude. I know they say that a lot, but it's more of how do I make the most impactful thing with what I have over here, rather than thinking too much about frameworks and how does this look and so on. Because you were mentioning the Marty Kagan stuff. Yeah, it's good in principle, but sometimes in practice, there's just like a lot of other things that kill you, and you need to take care of that before you can do nicer things and before you get the trust of the stakeholders there that they even let you do something else than what they specifically want in that specific week.
Do you have any book recommendation that you give to product managers, either like juniors when they first join or like senior product managers?
Teresa Torres' Continuous Discovering Habits. It's pretty useful. I also like the mom test to basically figuring out how to not ask leading questions, because you can also use this with stakeholders. It's just like such a usable thing. And on that vein, I've been reading Leadership is Language from the person who wrote the Turn the Ship Around. It's kind of like that, more on asking probabilistic questions. Instead of, let's say, going to your dev team and saying, are we ready to go? Are we ready to release? You could ask them, how ready do you think we are? And then kind of force them to give you, is this like a 60%? Is it an 80%? Is it a 40%? And what made you give that percentage? So this way you can figure out the reservations or potential problems that you wouldn't even know how to ask for in the beginning. So this part on communication. The other one I like is Thinking in Bets from Annie Dirk, poker player, because it's so helpful for prioritization, especially if you kind of build this around what are we thinking is most likely to give us the result that we want, and how are we estimating this against all the other things. At least for me, it has really helped with prioritization in general. And maybe the last one would be Make Time. Has a lot of tactics on how you can do calendar batching, how you could or organize your to-do list, how you could have like certain personal sprints for something. So there are a lot of things that don't work well together, but that's what I like about the book, that it gives you so many tactics, and you can try some of these tactics on your own to be more productive and save time. And I'm saying this because most of the PMs complain about not having time. So carving some of that thinking time for yourself, it's super useful, not only in this job, but also in life.
You mentioned asking questions, and it is the most underutilized tool ever. And I read a book called More Beautiful Questions and How to Ask Better Questions. I use it for coaching as well. So how do you coach those product managers? What kind of questions do you usually ask them on your one-on-ones?
I think I ask how I can be helpful. I usually want people to come and tell me if there's something. There's something I haven't tried yet from a CPO I admire, of removing all the recurring meetings. And this person even removes the one-on-ones, so that when there's something, they are immediately available to respond. Apparently this person responds to all messages within like 3 minutes.
Oh, wow.
And it's super large. It's over 1,500 employees company, one of the European unicorns. And I'm wondering if this is like the best productivity trick, to not have recurring meetings in your calendar, and then expect people to come in. And of course, he's also on top of their numbers and what's going on. But it would be more trying to understand from them where they are at, if there's something that's on their mind, if there's something that I can be helpful with. Another part, I try to be on top of a lot of Slack threads and conversations. And if there's something that puzzles me, I ask them, how did you arrive at this conclusion? Or what made you take this decision? So I understand a bit more about the background there, especially if I feel that I would have done something different, but also in general, because maybe there's something I'm missing and they actually did right. And that was also the case in some examples.
Mirela, again, we reached the end of the episode, but thank you so much for being very transparent with us. How can our audience know more about you, more about Product People, if they're interested to know if hiring a fractional product manager is the right thing for them?
Sure. For that, you can go to getproductpeople.com and schedule a call via the website. You can also find me on LinkedIn, and my email address is also mirela.mus@getproductpeople.com in case you're an email person. Of course, I'm on Twitter and X and actually X and everything else.